Welcome to Xilinive. Today we are going to discuss about the importance of flow diagrams, flow diagrams. At the same time, we will be discussing about the flow charts, followed by this pictorial way of representation by showing you about UML diagrams. At the same time, ER diagrams, all that stuff. As you all well aware about that, pictorial representation of any of the process is essentially important in any application development. So it's not only for IT related stuff, even in non-IT. If you want to explain some process to someone, some of your team members, it is always effective for us to prepare some pictorial representation way of approach so that people will understand the process well in advance so that they can implement the logics and all everything accordingly. At the same time, when we want to create any kind of databases and all everything, when we are preparing some database designing all that, so there are some entity relationship diagrams which we have to create, which explains us about the kind of entities what we are preparing, followed by this how it is relating to one another. It may be one to one, or it may be one to two, or it may be one to many. Right, so pictorial representation plays a vital and important role. Hence, I'm going to show you in a high level note how these diagrams looks like and how to prepare these diagrams. Please do remember I am not explaining all these in detail. So due to the time constraints, all that, I am explaining in a limited manner. So to prepare these diagrams, there are a lot of tools available online. So there are something like Star UML, which I'm using now. At the same time, we have even a tool called Rational Rows, which will be used in the organizations. At the same time, we have a tool called Microsoft Visio, which is so popular. People uses Visio to prepare these diagrams and all. Of course, Visio is not only for preparing flow charts, UML diagrams, ER diagrams, all that. Even business process flows can be prepared in it. At the same time, even civil, mechanical, electronic people will also be used to create some floor plans. At the same time, creating some circuits, all that. So Visio is a tool which is also used for different other reasons. So these are the couple of tools I can name it. At the same time, there is another tool called Lucid Charts, which is an online one. So that also can be used to prepare these flow processes, all that. So as in well, why I'm showing you on Star UML, because it is easy for us to install. Hardly takes not more than 5 minutes time. Hence, I have taken Star UML as an example here. Now, to start with, if you want to prepare any kind of diagrams and all, here you can see there is an option called model. Click on this model. So where you have an option called add diagram. Now, these are the diagrams because there are a lot of diagrams as I told you. Again, I'm repeating you. If you have UML diagrams as separate, UML stands for Unified Modeling Language. Those are separate. Next, flow charts, flow diagrams, data flow diagrams are separate. And third is ER diagrams. ER diagrams means entity relationship diagrams, explains you about the entities in the database designing. So these are the three different variations we have. Now, when you talk about UML, Unified Modeling Language, there are a lot of diagrams will be there. Like use case diagram will be used for explaining about the primary actors and how these primary actors were connecting one among one. It will be, which is a static one. At the same time, we have class, package, and object diagram, which will be used majorly when we are writing some code for any of the project. How are these classes will be introduced in it, and how these objects and packages were integrated in it. At the same time, component diagram is being used, like what are the hardware and software components are we using while we are developing the application. Component diagram is being used. Next, when we want to deploy an application, there is a deployment procedure which we have to format. So that preparation of a deployment diagram and all everything used for deployment procedures, all that stuff. At the same time, activity diagram, which explains you about the activity process. Whatever the activity process are we following on. So that activity process will also be involved in it as well. Next, these are UML diagrams. And whatever I'm explaining you about flowcharts. Flowcharts means, you know, right from the olden days, we used to prepare some flowcharts like where the focus more on if-else condition. If-else condition means if, for example, you have inserted a card in an ATM system, right? So when we have given a PIN number there, if the PIN number is right, so what should happen? Else, if the PIN number is wrong, what should happen on the screen? So to explain all that, generally these flow diagrams and all everything will be used. Now, ER diagram is nothing but entity relationship diagram, which explains you about the entities. Whatever the entities do we have, all these to prepare those entities and how these relationship will connect and all. For that, generally ER diagrams are being used. Now I'm going to show you a use case diagram first, because first of all let me explain you about UML first, then I'll go for flows followed by ER diagram. Now here is a use case diagram. You can see, click on use case diagram. Whenever you have clicking on that particular model, in this model you can go there, you can see that use case one. Whenever you click there, automatically this toolbox will be changed accordingly, because depends on the kind of diagram what we are using. These toolbox will vary, because this toolbox will not be the same for all the time. Now I'm taking an example of an ATM system. Okay, so what ATM system is? ATM means person can go into the ATM machine where they can insert the card. So either he wants to deposit the money or he wants to withdraw the cash, they can do it, right? So this is what it is. Now, for example, if you want to explain this in a pictorial way to the people, how do you do that? First of all, we have to identify who are the users. So users will be mentioned in a form of actor here. You can see there is an option called actor. Click on this actor, go here and click as customer, right? Customer is one actor. Second, I'm creating one more actor called ATM technician, because if there is any problem happens for any system, troubleshooting will be taken care of by them. Hence, technician is one more. So customer is one actor. At the same time, you have ATM technician as well. So you have ATM technician here also. Now, when you talk about customer, what customer can do? Customer can log in. Customer can withdraw money, customer can deposit, right? For example, let me take these three as an example. Now, whatever the activities or whatever the activities they are performing, that will be represented using use case. You can see here is called use case. So I'm creating three use cases. One is for login as separate, one is for cash deposit, and third one is cash withdraw, right? So login is one, cash deposit is second, cash withdraw. Now what an ATM technician can do? ATM technician is the one which is useful for troubleshooting it, right? Troubleshooting any application like. So you are creating, right? So troubleshooting and all, everything will be done by the ATM technician here, right? Right, so this is what generally ATM technician is being used. Now, if a customer wants to log in, or he wants to deposit or withdraw, or else an ATM technician wants to troubleshoot this, what is that they have to do? Make sure they need to connect with the ATM system, right or not? So hence what I'm doing, I'm creating an actor here called ATM system. Called ATM system I'm creating. ATM usually depending, and as well as this will be connected to the bank server, whichever the bank it could be, it will be connecting to the server. So that I am creating one more actor called server. So if ATM system has to perform well, what is it required? Server is a connectivity which is mandatory. Hence here you can see there is an option called dependency. Click on this and connect from ATM to server, right? So this is a dependency, right? So this is a dependency here. Now a customer wants to log in. Here there is an option called directed association login, right? He can log in here. Next, directed association will also be used to connect the cash deposits, at the same time cash withdrawal. But make sure if you want to do this, for example, if you want to do this, make sure there must be a login which has to be performed. So unless until if you don't log in properly, this cash deposit and withdraw process won't become successful. So here is a dependency. This is where generally this dependency comes into account, right? So dependency of, unless until if there is no login process successful, these two cannot be done. This is where dependency come into existence. Now if you want to log in, first of all you have to connect with the ATM system. Now an ATM technician wants to troubleshoot an application, they have to connect even with ATM system as well. So this is how generally an ATM system looks like. For example, if you are a business analyst, wherein if you want to explain this requirement, how ATM system looks like externally and all everything to your one of your technical team members. How do you explain? This is one way of pictorial representation where we can explain to the team members so that they will be understood well in advance, right? So this is what generally UML stands for. Now, for example, if you want to prepare a sequence diagram, now how many sequences we can prepare? For login as separate, cash deposit as separate, withdraw as separate, troubleshooting as separate. So this is a static diagram. Use case is a static one. But when it comes to sequence diagrams and all everything, we're dynamic. Because whatever the process you have initiated may not be the same all the time. There are possibilities that changes can be made at any point of time. That's the reason why those we call it as dynamic diagrams. Now here with I am explaining you a sequence diagram for cash deposit. Okay, cash deposit I am showing you as an example. You can go again to the model, add diagram. Here you can see there is an option called sequence diagram. Here you can see there is an option called lifeline. Customer is performing it, right? Customer is connecting to an ATM system. Next, here one more lifeline we are creating for server, right? One more is for server. Customer, ATM system, server. Now here there is an option called message. If a customer wants to deposit money, what he has to do first? First he has to insert the card. So whenever customer has inserted the card, what will happen? This has to be verified and validated. So message again, I'm just mentioning it as VV, stands for verification and validation. Now server will replace, for example, there is a if else condition will be applicable here. Usually if else condition we don't prepare in sequence, that we prepare in flow diagrams and all everything, there you will be seeing it. But for example, assume that whatever the card was inserted and all, that was the reading process will happen through an ATM system and it will connect to the server. Now server will give a reply message. This is where you can see there is an option called reply message, where you can write down here as enter pin, right? Enter pin, right? So this is what generally you need to get. Now this we can extend like this, right? If you want to extend these lines vertically, you can extend, right? Enter pin. Now what customer is doing? Customer is giving pin entered. When there is a pin entry has been happened. Now again the same, okay? Entered. Now it will verify and validate whether the pin number is right or wrong. If the pin number is right, it will get a reply message. You get a reply message. Choose the service. Whatever the service people wants to choose, they have to choose the service. Now customer has chosen a service called cash deposit. Right? Cash deposit is what the service customer has chosen. Now cash deposit has chosen here. Cash deposit has chosen. So when there is a cash deposit which was chosen, automatically it will give you a reply message to you. Again, reply message, you will get a reply message here that insert cash. Right? Now again there is one more reply message, cash inserted. Right? Now whenever this cash insert has done, yeah. Right. So whenever the cash inserted has done, automatically what will happen now? Immediately it will verify and validate. That means the counting process will happen here, and you get a reply message as cash deposit successful, right? So cash deposit successful. This is how generally you get a message. After that, if it will ask you whether do you want to continue or withdraw, maybe customer is using an option called sign out, right? So this is how generally a sequence diagram will be prepared here accordingly, right? So this is what generally that sequence diagram we prepare. So whatever the diagram I have shown you earlier is a use case diagram, which is a high level note. In reference to this, this is a sequence diagram, explains you about the sequential process of a cash deposit. Okay, not for any other things. Cash deposit I have shown you here. So this is how generally UML diagrams will be prepared accordingly. Now I am going to show you a flow diagram. For example, if you want to prepare a flow chart, right? Again, you go there, flow chart. For example, you want to explain a process called login, right? On a high level one, I am showing you, right? So process, for example, process login, enter details, right? So this is what generally I have given. So here there is a flow where you are creating flow here and you are extending the flow like this. These entering details will be extended here accordingly. Understood? Right. So here is an option where entering details will be happens here accordingly. Right. So this is how generally the login process in reference to the flow processes and all everything will be. On a high level note, I was explaining it to you. Right. I'm not going anything in detail as I mentioned in the beginning. Right. So for example, if you want to create any kind of alternative process and all, this alternative process called, for example, second verification. Okay. Right, second verification is an alternate process. This second verification as prepared will be prepared here accordingly. So there is a process flow which can be explained here, right? So this is what generally flow charts and all everything is being used for this reason, whatever that we are going to prepare. So here we need to mention all the process flows and all everything here so that people will understand all these accordingly here itself. This is how generally these flow diagrams, all these will be prepared here. Now, when you go to add diagrams, again, you have an option called ER diagrams. ER diagrams are the one which is used to prepare entity relationships. Means if there is any kind of database designing you're doing, these entity relationship diagrams is being used. Now, here, for example, there is an entity I'm using called customer name. Right? So, customer name is what an entity I have given. Where, for example, one more entity I have created called login, right? So one more entity called login which was created by me here. Now one to many relationships or many to many relationships, one to one relationships or one to many, yeah, one to one relationships or one to many relationships, right? So these relationships can be extended, right? So one to one relationships can be prepared here. One to one relationship here, one to many, at the same time many to many relationships, right? Many to many relationships also can be prepared here. So these many to many relationships majorly focusing on whatever the activities we are performing in this application, what is that flow process and all everything we are explaining here accordingly. So here are the annotations if you want any kind of note links or annotations to be used, those annotations and all everything can be used here. End of the day, that is anyway that's a separate context altogether. So this is how, for example, if you want to implement any kind of image, right? So let's say that if you want to take any kind of image here, I'm just taking an image here where I'm just clicking on this, and if I want to, yeah, so if I want to text any kind of image here, any image I want to put, right? So this is how I can put my image. So means images are optional, of course, and images are not so mandatory. Images, if you want, you can put some images, all that. So this is how generally an entity relationship diagrams. So entity relationship majorly focusing on the database designing part, followed by one-to-one and one-to-many relationships here. So these are the different diagrams which being a people who are working in industry. Either you may be a business analyst, or you may be a technical person, or it may be a role in a project manager, or they may be a non-IT person who are relating to explaining about the flow diagrams, all that stuff. So this is how generally these diagrams will be prepared. So there are a lot of tools as I mentioned you like MS Visio, Star UML, Rational Rules, of course. These are the different tools will be used, but how to prepare these diagrams and how to understand these diagrams is essentially required for anyone to understand. So this is what generally the pictorial representation of the one which I have shown you in detail. For more details and if you need any other information in regarding to this, so you always have an option where you can reach us our contact details which will be posted below to this video. Thank you.